A former Army veteran made the heartfelt decision to adopt the dog who had once been his military partner. However, the reunion didn't go as expected. The dog appeared uneasy, failing to recognize him. As the veteran reached into his bag, an unexpected moment unfolded. Just then, the door of a nearby restaurant swung open, and a woman from the K9 Hero Haven shelter stepped outside, holding a leash in her right hand. On the other end was Luna, a small black German shepherd walking closely behind. John, an Army veteran, felt his breath catch as he saw her. For weeks he had been anxiously waiting for this moment. He had been restless, counting down the days until he could finally reunite with Luna, his former Army K9 partner. Sitting at a modest wooden table in the restaurant's corner, he was brimming with nervous energy. The background noise, the clinking of forks, the soft murmur of conversation, faded into nothingness as he watched them approach. Luna's coat had lost some of its shine, but her sharp, intelligent eyes remained unchanged. However, she did not look at him the way she once did. Her posture was stiff, her body tense as if waiting for a command. As she scanned her surroundings, the woman guiding her smiled warmly at John and stepped forward. John stood up, his limbs heavy, weighed down by emotions he hadn't felt in years. Lowering himself to her level, he extended a trembling hand toward Luna. "Luna," he whispered. The sound of her name made her ears twitch, but there was no other reaction. No wagging tail, no flicker of recognition. To her, John was just another stranger in the room. His heart sank. He swallowed hard, steadying himself, and tried again. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. But Luna remained still, her eyes shifting between him and her handler. The dog who had once been his lifeline, his most trusted partner, showed no sign of remembering him. Her indifference cut deeper than any wound he had ever sustained in combat. Desperation creeping into his voice, he reached out once more. "It's me, John, your friend." Luna took a hesitant step back, sniffing the air cautiously, but not moving closer. The bond they had forged in the depths of war now felt irreparably broken. His outstretched hand slowly dropped to his side. He glanced up at the woman, silently, pleading for reassurance, but she remained quiet, as if the moment was too painful to intrude upon. He had known she might not remember him. He had prepared himself for that possibility, but he had never imagined it would hurt this much, to be forgotten by the one who had saved him more times than he could count. Sometimes it just takes time, the woman finally said, offering a glimmer of hope. A familiar trigger can bring memories rushing back. John nodded slowly, forcing a smile. Yeah, maybe. But the ache in his chest remained. The reunion he had longed for had instead become a stark reminder of the way time and distance had eroded their once unbreakable connection. Just a year ago, they had been inseparable. 03:46. Luna had been assigned to John after his third deployment, a bomb-sniffing K9 with an unmatched instinct. Having just completed her training, she was a new addition to his unit. He hadn't known what to expect at first, but it didn't take long for them to form an unshakable bond. They became an unstoppable team. Beyond detecting explosives, Luna served as his emotional anchor, giving him a reason to push forward even in the darkest moments of war. Whether navigating treacherous missions or simply enduring the daily realities of combat, she was his constant. Then came the mission that changed everything. It was supposed to be routine, clearing an area known for hidden IEDs, but something felt off from the start. The tension in the air was suffocating. Then in an instant, an explosion ripped through their convoy. The force of the blast hurled John backward, leaving his body numb, his ears ringing. Pain clouded his mind, and for a moment, everything blurred. When he finally regained some awareness, he saw Luna. She was injured, limping, but still alert. Even in pain, she fought to reach him, dragging herself closer. He could barely move, his body refusing to cooperate, but her presence kept him conscious. She refused to leave his side, even when the medics arrived. They had to physically pull her away just to tend to him. It was the last time he saw her before being transported home to recover, his body broken and his mind scarred by the experience. However, Luna was sent to a different handler while John recovered, though it felt as if a piece of him had been torn. Away, the military couldn't allow him to keep her. She was simply too valuable. But Luna was never the same after the explosion that had wounded them both. Even though she received a clean bill of health physically, the emotional scars from the trauma lingered. Her new handler soon noticed subtle yet troubling changes in her behavior. She was anxious, less responsive to commands, and struggled to stay focused. Worse still, she seemed to have lost parts of her memory. Tasks that once came naturally now confused her. After months of difficulty in the field, Luna was relieved of active duty and entered the military's K-9 retirement program. She was placed in foster care while awaiting permanent placement, but her behavior became increasingly unpredictable. Without John, without the connection and purpose they had shared, Luna seemed lost. The horrors of war had left a deep mark on her, just as they had on John. Every day he wrestled with guilt over leaving her behind. Their bond had never been just about duty. It was about survival, trust, and an unspoken reliance on one another. When John discovered that Luna had been retired, he saw an opportunity to make things right. He longed to bring her home, to help her heal, just as he had spent years trying to heal himself. John had battled PTSD for years, struggling to come to terms with the war's lasting scars. He was convinced that reuniting with Luna was the missing piece to his recovery. But Luna had buried that chapter of her life deep beneath layers of fear and survival instincts. Her memory of John wasn't gone. It was locked away, shielded by the trauma she had endured. Had she truly forgotten him? Would he be bringing home a dog who no longer loved him? Or worse, one who saw him as a painful reminder of everything she had fought to forget? But their time together had been more than just hardship. They had played, cuddled for hours, watched the sun rise and set from their shared tent. She might not want to remember the pain, but perhaps she could still remember the love. He just had to find a way to reach her through the fear. Then he remembered something, a trigger, just as the specialist had suggested. John reached into his backpack, his fingers brushing against a familiar fabric. Slowly, he pulled out a worn military jacket, his old field jacket, the one he had worn through countless missions with Luna. He had kept it in his bag for years without knowing why, but now it was clear. The jacket still carried the dust, scratches, and scents of their time together. It had been there through every sleepless night, every moment of danger, and every silent exchange of companionship. Heart pounding, John rose from his seat and approached Luna, holding the jacket out carefully. His voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Do you remember this, buddy?" Luna's ears twitched, her nose lifting as she caught a familiar scent in the air. At first, her reaction seemed distant, detached, but then something shifted. Her brows furrowed, her head tilted, and she took a deeper sniff of the fabric. John held his breath, his heart hammering in his chest. Luna hesitated, stepping forward, cautiously before making a bolder move. She sniffed again, her body tense. Then, for the first time in so long, her tail gave a faint wag. Her scanning gaze suddenly locked onto John's, filled with recognition. And then, something unexpected happened. A soft whimper escaped her, a sound John hadn't heard in years. In a sudden rush, she surged forward, pressing her face against the jacket, inhaling deeply as if starved for the scent. Her stiff posture melted, her tail wagged faster. And then, she lifted her eyes to John, filled with something undeniable. She knew him. John's chest tightened. Still gripping the jacket, he dropped to his knees. "Luna!" "It's me." Luna's tail wagged wildly. With no hesitation, she pressed her nose against his chest, licking his face, a rare gesture, one she had never made on the field. It wasn't protocol. It was pure relief, pure love. In that quiet moment in the middle of the restaurant, John felt his throat tighten, his vision blurred with unshed tears. The long, painful separation seemed to vanish as he wrapped his arms around her. The dog who had been his comrade, his protector, his lifeline, she had remembered. But then suddenly her body tensed again. She pulled away, her nose twitching, ears perking up as if detecting something unseen. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the room. A low growl rumbled in her throat. John's relief shifted into alarm. "Luna?" he asked, following her gaze. She was on high alert, her posture rigid, just like she had been in the field, in the moments before danger struck. John felt it too. A familiar creeping tension. Something wasn't right. Luna's instincts had taken over. Her body tensed as if sensing an unseen threat nearby. She took cautious steps forward. A woman, watching with concern, softly asked, "Is she all right?" John shook his head, adrenaline rushing through his veins once more. "She's picking up on something," he murmured, his gaze locked on Luna. Her growl deepened. She was ready to act. John's heart pounded not from excitement but from an all-too-familiar tension. Luna had remembered him, but she also remembered danger. Now she had detected something John had yet to perceive. "What is it, Luna?" he asked again, his voice calm but laced with urgency. He stepped closer, placing a steady hand on her back, feeling the rigid tension coursing through her frame. The woman hesitated, observing Luna carefully. Is she reacting to something? I haven't seen her like this in a long time. She realized then, this was not just any dog. This was the battle-hardened Luna, the war hero who had saved lives by sensing threats before they appeared. Her voice faltered. Luna's eyes were locked onto a man sitting near the cafe's exit. He sat alone, sipping from a coffee cup, his baseball cap pulled low over his face. To any casual observer, he seemed ordinary, but Luna knew better. The man shifted slightly, his movements slow and deliberate. Too deliberate. John followed Luna's line of sight. His instincts, sharpened by years of service, kicked in. The man was trying too hard to appear normal. There was something off in the way he held his jacket, his posture stiff. He was hiding something. "Stop, Luna," John murmured, gently pulling her back but keeping her alert. He didn't want to cause panic, not yet. His mind raced. Was this just paranoia, or had Luna truly sensed danger? Then the man stood. His movements were too controlled, too rigid, and as he reached into his jacket, Luna erupted into a sharp, powerful bark, one that signaled imminent danger. The restaurant fell into absolute silence. Silverware clattered against plates. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. Every eye turned toward them. The man hesitated, his hand still inside his jacket. Then, he took a slow step toward the door. Luna lunged forward, barking with fierce determination, straining against John's grip. "Stop!" John's voice rang through the cafe, commanding immediate attention. Before the man could slip away, John stepped into his path. His heart hammered as he noticed the man's fingers still gripping something inside his coat. The air was thick with tension. John met his eyes. "What's in your jacket?" Luna growled again, her body low, ready to strike. The man's hand twitched. He glanced around, realizing he was trapped. Then, with a deep exhale, he slowly pulled out a small, unmarked package. John's pulse thundered as he took in the sight of it. The adrenaline surged once more. Was this an overreaction? Or was there real danger lurking in his hands? "What's that?" John demanded, his voice firm, his eyes never leaving the man. The stranger hesitated. "It's not what you think," he muttered. "I just have something to deliver." But John wasn't convinced. And then he saw him. Another man seated alone in the far corner, watching the entire exchange with unnerving calm. He wasn't just an onlooker, he was involved, and John's gut told him this was no coincidence. "Put the package down," John ordered, his voice cold and steady. The man hesitated, then slowly placed the bundle on the table. Luna's growl deepened, reinforcing the command. John's gaze flicked back to the observer in the corner, but before he could react, the man stood and slipped quietly out the back door. Something was wrong. This was planned. "Luna, sit," John instructed, holding her steady as he approached the package. His hands were steady, but his pulse roared in his ears. With deliberate caution, he reached out, peeling back the brown wrapping. Every muscle in his body braced for what lay beneath. The paper crinkled, unfolding inch by inch. And then he saw a small black device, wires protruding from its sides, a detonator. John froze. The weight of the moment crashed down on him. The atmosphere in the cafe shifted. What had been curiosity turned into a quiet, collective fear. Eyes widened. People held their breath. The man who had delivered the package stood frozen in place. Meanwhile, the other man, the one who had been watching, was gone. Slipped away unnoticed. Luna stood firm beside John, her muscles coiled, ready for anything. She had been right. Again. John inhaled deeply, regaining control of his racing thoughts. He secured the detonator and signaled for someone to call the police. The surge of adrenaline dulled, replaced by the weight of responsibility. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was part of something much bigger than a cafe. As authorities swarmed the scene, securing the threat, John and Luna finally stepped outside, away from the chaos. John ran a hand through Luna's fur, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breath. That same comforting presence she had always given him, and for the first time in a long time he knew she would always have his back. Luna sighed softly, resting her head on his lap. The doubts of whether she remembered him were gone. She had never truly forgotten. Their bond, tested by time, trauma, and separation, had proven unbreakable. It had even saved lives.